All this talk of paying more and more is getting me down, my love, like a cat in a bag, waiting to drown. This time we're not lying down. And I hope you're thinking of me as you're taking another bride. Now your lies don't work, they just make us hurt, and we're not falling for that again. And I know that we're no longer weak, 'cause we're taking it to the streets, and we're ready to show we refuse to go, and we'll fight you until the end. 'Cause can me, if violin falls, you're falling too, and this I swear, you're selling my life, I'm better off dead. All this talk of bail and bondholders, it's getting me down, my love, like a rat in a trap, waiting to drown. This time we're not backing down. Now your lies don't work, they just make us hurt, and we're not falling for it again. No, we're not taking a hit 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 again. Never backing down, never giving up, no more, no more, no more, no more, no more. Never backing down, never giving up, no more, no more, no more, no more, no more. No more, no more, no more, no more, no more. No more, no more, no more, no more, no more. No more, no more, no more, no more, no more. No more, no more, no more, no more, no more.
Good evening and welcome to the Velocity of Now with me, your host, Thomas Sheridan. It's the 8th, and it's now the 8th, there's a 7th in some parts of the world, of January 2015, and what you heard then, just after the intro, was a band called The Distance, well, a musical project, and that was, which I'm proud to be part of. We got together in early December, I think it was the second week of December in Dublin, and with no prior rehearsal, and I think we did it on a third take with of a live recording. There was no over-tracking or multi-tracking or anything, which was terrifying for me because that's usually how I've always recorded. But we managed to bang that song out. It was Paul Madden's idea initially, and the idea was to create a kind of a modern protest song about what's happening in Ireland tonight, today, last week, last year, 4 years ago, and what's happening in the future. And the song was a kind of a remake of it was a remake of the Drugs Don't Work by The Verve, which is a song we all love. And Paul came up with the idea of changing the lyrics to The Lies Don't Work. And he came up with most of the lyrics, and that was Sandra McShane you heard on the vocals. She helped with some of the lyrics as well. The band, The Distance, was Sandra McShane on the vocals and the acoustic guitar, me, Thomas Sheridan, on the lead guitar, Pat Murphy on the bass, and Paul Madden on the drums. And it was basically a modern Irish rebel song is what we were looking for. There's a video online for it. I'll post the link in the show page to go with it, of various protests around Ireland, and that's basically what the first hour of the show will be about. I just wanted to play the song at the beginning so everyone hears it, and you know that there's lots of ways you can fight oppression, there's lots of ways you can fight injustice, and there's lots of ways you can fight BS. You can do it creatively if you really want to. And I feel, and I've always felt, the purpose of artists, I mean switched on artists, whether they be musicians, singer-songwriters, poets, painters, anything, comedians, is to build a firewall around the population to prevent the propaganda from the psychopaths in charge from penetrating into the people. Our job is to act as a firewall, and that's always our job. And what happened in Paris today couldn't bring that more terrifyingly and darker into focus. There's no getting around it. Today is a very, very dark day. And I want to talk about later on in the show what happened in Paris with the horrific events there. But we'll do that afterwards. I want to talk about a few things specifically pertaining to Ireland here at the start. Again, this is The Velocity of Now, me, your host, Thomas Sheridan. My website is www.thomassheridanarts.com. The podcast and the video podcast are broadcast for this show episode will be up in a couple of days, and previous episodes are on www.newsymbolsmedia.tv. And there'll be links to various topics on the show, including the video for the song By the Distance that you just heard. If you want to go to my website, there's a huge amount of articles and information there. My YouTube channel is Thomas Sheridan Arts. It's heading towards 1.5 million views and about 8,000 subscribers now. So thank you for everyone who supported me over the years, even though I haven't always lived up to your expectations of what you wanted me to say. But I can't help that because I don't play conspiracy circle jerk. I don't join the team. I look at everything individually like an old-fashioned investigative journalist to the best of my ability with the evidence that I have. And I then make a decision after I've seen everything. I don't jump in right away. And I think that's a wise way to be, because we've all been caught with our knickers down, because there's all kinds of agendas in this world that make you pick sides. They want you to pick sides. But in some cases, both sides are wrong. We'll talk again a bit more about that later. If you go to the website, if you want to support me, you can buy a book there or something. You can go to the tab that says books. I'd be very grateful if you could do that. And thanks, and even just sharing my articles on my website if you're broke, that actually helps as well. So it gets the word out there, gets the news out there. Now, the title of the song we played was The Lies Don't Work, and they're not working. Much to my amazement, Ireland has woken up. I really did not expect this. I really did not expect this in a country where you can walk into a pub anywhere in the country when there's a soccer match playing on the TV, particularly if it's Man United versus Liverpool, and Irish people are going us, we, us, them, and getting all emotionally attached to 22 millionaires. Foreign millionaires in two British corporations overseas, with tears rolling down their eyes, to the point where you have guys in Cork wearing Liverpool jerseys calling fellas in Cork with Man United jerseys mank scum, and then in Dublin they're calling the ones in the Man United jerseys and the Liverpool jerseys scouse scum, and yet most of them they're all Irish, every last one of them. This is the power of media and the power of brainwashing, and I thought that the Irish were a finished race, having experienced things like that. The Irish were a very childlike and simple and easily led people, I believed. And I say this as an Irish person myself. I mean, I just felt that we were like that. But there's two sides to us, and I think for the first time since I've been a child, I'm seeing the other side. The other side is a fire that burns below the surface, that's within many Irish people that they don't like to bring to the surface, that they'll suppress it and they'll keep it. It's like a dark family secret that inside us is a kind of insurgent, is a kind of a rebel. But we don't like to bring it to the surface. It's probably a cultural thing in many cases. A good metaphor for that was, I was in Wicklow. Wicklow is the county next to Dublin. It's quite remote, actually, which is an interesting thing. I always find that, like, next to large cities all over the world, especially at their capital cities, there's always an area of wilderness beside it, right beside it. And so I was up there a few years ago. It wasn't a few years ago. I think it was late. Yeah, it was early last year with Aidan Killian, the comedian. We were making a movie, and unfortunately I think they ran out of funds to complete the film, but we got some great footage. Hopefully it'll see the light one day. And we were coming back, I think, over the mountains, and someone just pointed out the gorse. I can't remember who it was. All the gorse. Now, gorse is called furze in Ireland. It's a particularly kind of brittle shrub. It's got spikes on it, but it has this. It's got this kind of dualist aspect to it. It's brittle and covered in spikes, but when the flowers, the pretty yellow flowers appear on it, it smells like coconuts. So you're walking through the Irish countryside in early summer and you smell coconuts everywhere. That's the gorse flowers. Now what's interesting about the gorse is the wood is highly combustible. I'm not sure why. I think someone told me there was some kind of resin or something inside it that burns very quickly. Now the gorse tree amazingly can have fires underneath the ground that burn for years and years and years. The fires burn very slow. And I'm back. This time I'm lucky I have Paul, the greatest second producer in the world, who's calling me all the way from Florida, but I'm back on the air, on the phone, and I can hope you can hear me. They shut off the internet. I've no doubt about it. The internet has been on for days on end. The red light never came on the modem, and as soon as I start talking tonight about anything, as soon as I start getting to the conversation, the modem goes off. I can't get online. The timing is too perfect, and I've no doubt it's an attack. And why it's an attack is because I'm a genuine observer. If I was to talk about aliens, shape-shifting crocodiles in the House of Lords, reptilians, I'd be left alone because I wouldn't be a danger to them. If I was to talk about spacemen controlling everything, I wouldn't be a danger to them. If I was to talk about UFO woo being a danger to the system, I would be left alone. No, but because I have an independent opinion and I don't play conspiracy circle jerk and join the team in the hope one day I get on Alex Jones' show where I'll be a big star in the conspiracy scene, I'm a threat. Simple as that. Now, I hope you can hear the program okay. I was already fired up before I came on, and there's no way these bastards are going to take us down because this... You want to know who the real people are in this scene? The ones... I can tell you who aren't the real ones. The ones who have been left alone for years. It's as simple as that. They don't get taken down. Anyway, they want me to say that the attack in Paris today was a conspiracy. They want me to say that because they want to ridicule this movement completely and anyone in it who... They do not want free, independent thinking. They want one side of Sheeple 1.0 who say it's affecting, it's always Muslims attacking, and they want Sheeple 2.0 on the other side saying it's always a false flag attack. What they don't want is independent voices like mine who say, hold on, let's take one thing at a time. They don't want that. So if you're into my show, follow my Facebook page, or into my stuff because you expect conspiracy circle jerks, okay? You came to the wrong guy because that's not me, okay? Now, as I was saying, I'll get through this somehow. The gorse fire, okay? The gorse fire is a fire burning under the ground, okay? When the conditions are right, you may have this ember that's been burning along a root or a stem deep under the ground for 50 years might suddenly explode into a maelstrom on the surface. Now what happens then is you get a ferocious wildfire. So you had decades of a flickering ember below the soil, below the ground, and then suddenly the conditions were correct, and you had a gorse fire. And these gorse fires, believe it or not, they are like, you would not believe them. A few years ago here, the mountains went on fire. And when I say the mountains went on fire, I mean at night time, the entire mountains from one end to the other, which is about a 20, 30 mile range, was completely orange all along the top. And the place was covered in smoke for days because that one ember had made it to the surface and caused a wildfire. And that wildfire is necessary because it rejuvenates the soil. It infuses it with nitrogen. And that's what the soul of the Irish people are today. The burning ember within inside them finally ignited. It finally took off. And the dormancy came to life. And the apathy was removed all of a sudden. And the politicians, the EU globalists, and all the others didn't expect this to happen. And it did. The ember made it forward. Now, we went from a situation where Irish people were incredibly apathetic. They were quite happy watching TV, even when things got bad, even when the European Union and the IMF came in and shafted us. They were still like, oh, you know, I'm angry, but we have to do it. But what changed everything was the water, was the situation with Irish water. That changed everything. Because that unleashed in the Irish people a kind of a repressed memory of a family tragedy. And that family tragedy was the famine and the land clearances. Most of the people in the famine died, not from starvation, but they died of things like disease and exposure. And one of the reasons they did this was because the psychopaths in charge back then wanted to clear the countryside out of people, which they did effectively, get them to go to America, or just have them die, so they could fill the land full of sheep. It happened in Scotland too with the Highland clearances. What they used to do was, they used to burn the thatch off the roof of the houses. And they would do that with the police and the landlords. They were called the Royal Irish Constabulary. Well, they were called like sheriffs. They were actually sheriffs back then at that time. But they would set fire to the thatch roof cottages. Now, the thatch roof cottages were not just made up of thatch. Underneath the thatch, you would have a insulation layer made up of peat, turf. Blocks of turf cut. Very highly, not only an incredible fuel, but also a very good insulator. And that was the insulation in these old thatch roof cottages. That's what kept them so warm. There's one near here that's actually a beautiful restoration of an Irish cottage called Dolly's Cottage. And if you go inside, you can actually see the pieces of turf in the ceiling. So that the thing would burn to a maelstrom, and that meant the family had no roof over their house. So the security was taken away from them, and they were put onto the road. And then the rain came, and then they died of disease. Water. When they came to shut off our water, these despicable cartels made up of individuals and politicians with a cozy relationship, were doing the same thing. They were taking away Irish people's right to survive. It didn't matter or not if they could get water from somewhere else. The symbology of these Irish water workers descending upon communities in order to shut off or to install the means to shut off their water supply triggered a collective memory within the Irish psyche of our people 150 years ago having the sheriffs and the landlords coming around to burn the roofs off our houses. It ignited, and I mean that literally, it ignited something within the soul, and then things changed rapidly, incredibly. It only takes a short time to go from complacency to insurgency.
Right before the revolution in Russia, they had the coronation of the Romanovs, Tsar Nicholas. Something like 2 million people went to Moscow for the coronation. In one episode, thousands were killed in a stampede when they were giving out free collectible mugs. That was wild devotion to the Tsar and the Romanovs. All it took was World War I for that to end. There's a very, very fine line between complacency and insurgency, and they pushed us over it. They pushed us over it with the water issue. Now let me explain to you, there's probably people all over the world saying, well, everyone everywhere pays for water. Water is a natural resource and it's finite. No, it isn't. Water is not limited in Ireland. It rains in some parts of this country 300 days plus days a year. A lot of this land is soggy. This is a land of rivers and massive lakes, lochs, surrounded by the ocean where it rains constantly. There are massive aquifers under the ground and underground springs. When they came to frack our water supply, it was a rape. It was a rape of our landscape to pollute, infect, and impregnate the underground water supply. So they would have the excuse. This fracking thing is going nowhere, by the way. People who are protesting fracking don't have to worry about it. This is just it's an energy .com bubble. It'll just be like the .com. It'll vanish. But what they were really after, well, firstly, they wanted to industrialize the countryside. That's why they allowed the wind turbines, because it allowed them to change the planning laws and the codes and the regulation for industrializing and structures in the countryside. That was stage one. The second one was the fracking. Right after that, we had that piece of garbage at Nestle telling us that water wasn't a human right. Ireland is a land of nothing but water. It's like going to Saudi Arabia and telling them they have to have a meter on the amount of sand in the desert, because sand is a finite resource there. That's how absurd it is. One of the guises that they're using to bring in this Irish water monstrosity is they say that, well, lots of the pipes under the ground are leaking. So what? So what? The water still gets to the houses. Where does it go? It eventually ends up in aquifers. Aquifers can be tapped for water. There's no shortage. If we were living in Spain or Italy or Portugal or North Africa and we had massive leaks in our pipes, it would be an issue. It isn't in Ireland because it rains here constantly. It's an infinite resource here. And then people say, well, you have to pay for it through taxes. But the thing is, we already do pay for it through a slew of all kinds of taxes. They just hadn't metered it. The metering was the final violation. This machine was the ultimate gaslighting, the ultimate metering. This was the thing that threw people over the edge. These work crews descending upon neighborhoods, digging a hole in the ground and putting in this electronic device that can be shut off, just like when the sheriffs and the Royal Irish Constabulary and the landed gentry set fire to the thatch above our ancestors' heads. It could be destroyed, and we could be destroyed with it. Now, the person behind Irish Water is a bizarre baby man haircut individual called Dennis O'Brien. This guy is already a billionaire, and he's an insatiable maggot. He is a maggot that has eaten all the flesh on a corpse, and it wasn't enough for it, so it's now trying to burrow into the bones to get at the marrow. That's what he is. Enough is never enough for Dennis O'Brien. Never. He doesn't understand the concept. When he was a little boy, he probably wanted the other kids' toys. He wanted it all. He's baby Dennis. Baby Dennis. Baby Dennis has to get what he wants. Baby Dennis, I'm Baby Dennis O'Brien. I have to get what I want. I'll throw a tantrum, and then I'll go to my newspapers and the 40 media outlets that I own, and I will write bad things about you. I will tell those pieces of crap propagandists who work for me to say bad things about you. How dare you? I'm Dennis O'Brien. And that's what that maggot is like. We should not have to tolerate this creature. This creature is not my God, and he's not the God of other Irish people. He is the modern Trevelyan. And that's how we should see him. Trevelyan was the British diplomat who basically decided that during the famine, sending corn or wheat to Ireland to help the starving millions was a bad idea because it would damage the economy. It would damage the exports of the ones who had the grain. Trevelyan O'Brien is how he should be seen. He's a monster. He's not a billionaire hotshot businessman. And he's a maggot. And this maggot controls Irish water, and he also controls all the media outlets. And these media outlets are what he uses to wage war on anyone who dares to question him. And that's what we did with that band in Dublin back in that song you heard at the beginning of The Distance. We built a stockade and said, oh, no way, Jose. With your bizarre, like he has a haircut. His haircut looks like someone put a bowl on his head and then trimmed around the front. You know those kind of institutionalized haircuts. It's this really strange kind, and it's almost like this little boy persona that hides this kind of ruthless, insatiable creature behind it. He also, he's known within the ruling party in Ireland, Fine Gael, founded out of a neo-Nazi party called the Blue Shirts. The early days of that party, you can see photographs of them doing the C. Kyle salute, dressed in black or just in blue, sorry. And that's the party today. They're talking about inclusivity. So those of you who are stupid enough to actually fall in love with National Socialism, remember that it's all the same thing, okay? You've just been duped again. But anyway, they call him Uncle Dennis. Uncle Dennis. And that's what's happening in Ireland. On top of that, they have the austerity measures. We have the Minister for Health saying, hey, get used to dying in the corridors of hospitals. That's what he's done. And if you go around Ireland, one of the things you notice is that they have this thing called ministerial plaques. And what they are, if a wing is open in an airport, if a stretch of motorway is opened, if a new bus station is opened, the minister in charge shows up, the Minister for Psychopathy, whatever he's called, shows up and pulls a little curtain and a plaque opens and says, this bus station was opened by the Minister of, Flatulence in 2011, and his name is there. Like they're gods, these are gods, and they built monoliths. See, our ancestors built monoliths to the stars. Nowadays, these creatures build monoliths to themselves, ministerial plaques, and that's what they're like. And that's all they want. They want ministerial plaques. This is all they want. They don't care about anything else. And I know all countries are corrupt. I know all countries have scumbag politicians, but there's something particularly feckless and obnoxious about the Irish ones. When the IMF was coming in, and it was becoming rapidly apparent that the previous government, had completely mismanaged the economy, all these cretins suddenly had health problems. Minister so-and-so has to resign because he has a health problem. The most infamous of these is a Minister for Transport called Martin Cullen. He was also the minister who brought in these e-voting machines that didn't work. He suddenly jumped. She was one of the first ones to jump ship because he knew the gravy train was over. He was showing up at the government buildings with a walking stick, pretending his back was broken. Within no time, he's living in Florida with some chick and selling paintings and he lives on a fucking golf course, and he talks about getting a round of golf in every day. So his back was